You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us. Hi, I'm Annie from the US.
And I'm Johanna from Austria, and you are listening to your favorite international podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in, as I like to say, even though this isn't the radio. But no, thank you for joining us for another episode of a podcast with, two hosts who live on different continents and have never met in real life. We will one day, right? Probably. Right?
Maybe. Who knows? Let's see. Let's find out.
And that's when I start my next podcast called How I Was Catfished by an Austrian.
It's the eternal cliffhanger.
It is, that's true. All right, seriously though, thank you so much for sticking with us, for your support. You send us the kindest messages and leave the nicest reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we couldn't, and we really wouldn't want to do it without you, our Hellions. We just adore you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Listen up. One last thing I want to mention before we get into this week's episode. Please consider voting for us in the 2022 People's Choice Podcast Awards. You can still vote until the end of July. I will keep asking you until the end of the month. Quick reminder of how this works. Please go to podcastawards.com. Register your email, and it needs to be a valid email address, and you will need to verify it.
Yep, that's right. But don't worry, they're not going to send you spam or sell your information to anybody.
No, they won't. It would also be great if you could check that little box that asks if you want to be considered for the second round of voting. So this is how it works. Once the final slate is set, the second round of voting will start, and they will randomly select people who voted in the first round to vote for the winner in each category. So, it would be awesome if we would have at least a couple of listeners in that voters pool, so to say.
Yeah, that really would be great. And not everyone can vote for the winner. It's not a contest where, you can vote as much as you want. In round one, you're basically saying, I think that this particular show should go forward for a vote in this category, right? And then round two, only people who voted and verified an email in round one will get an invitation to vote for the winner in round two. And you can only vote once for each category, unlike the podcast top 50 where you can vote every day. That's a different thing. This is like a big, we got a real trophy. This is like a big award thing. And you will be able to vote for us in the categories of Best Female Hosted, Best True Crime, Best History, and everybody is automatically up for People's Choice. So if you could please go to podcastawards.com, give them your actual email address in hopes that you will be called forth to vote for the winner in round two, and vote for us. We would be so grateful. And don't forget to vote for all of your other podcasts. There are a lot of great shows up for awards this year. So go check it out.
Tough
take
competition.
A look. Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for your assistance in helping us in this endeavor. Sincerely yours.
Thank you. Really, truly. We so appreciate your help. And after seeing what you did with us in the Hot 50, we know you can do anything.
We really do have amazing listeners.
Yes.
We love you.
I'd say that's it for now.
Yeah.
It's time to dive into today's episode. You know that missing person cases are the ones who are always extremely close to my heart, so to say, because, I don't know, I can only begin to imagine how the families of missing people must feel. And of course, we always hope that they are found. Mostly we do hope, of course, that they are found alive and well. That goes for the more contemporary cases we cover, like Aisha Degree, Lars Mittang, and Erin Gilleran. And then, in older missing person cases, of course, we know that the victim or possible victim of a crime will not be found alive anymore because just too much time has passed and the person would be well over 100 years old, like Dorothy Arnold comes to mind. Now, this week, once more, we know that the person will not be found alive because too much time has passed, but that doesn't mean that the case is not interesting anymore. It's a mystery that turned into kind of an urban legend, It's the story of Owen Parfit, who disappeared in 1763 or 1768. We can't be completely sure about the exact year.
Yeah. So, okay. This all takes place in England, in Shepton Millet, which is a market town and civil parish in the Mendip district of Somerset, England, which is some 16 miles or 26 kilometers southwest of Bath, and 18 miles or 29 kilometers south of Bristol. Today, Shepton Millet has a population of nearly 11,000, but in the 18th century, it was below 5,000. Now, we could tell you all about the Roman settlement that existed where Shepton Millet is now, or how the plague decimated almost the entire population in 1348. But the village prospered in the 15th century thanks to merchants and tradesmen who came from France, Belgium, and what we now call the Netherlands, and settled in the quaint little village whose name Shepton comes from the Old English words shep and tun, which simply means sheep farm. But we don't really have time to get into all of that today, do we? No. So, in the 18th century, so when today's story takes place, Shepton was famous for its wool and fabrics. Yes, please. And apparently there were around 50 wool mills in and around Shepton Millet. Nowadays, the town is best known for its cider production, and it's the closest town to the Glastonbury Festival. And because we love travel and found that most places on this beautiful planet are worth a visit, let's see what we would be able to check out in Shepton Millet should we have the chance to visit. So this comes from visitsomerset.co.uk. Quote, Shepton Millet is a market town with a rich and colorful history nestled at the gateway to the Mendip Hills, an area of outstanding natural beauty. The town is a perfect center to explore the surrounding hills, crisscrossed with trails, footpaths, and the remains of ancient and medieval industry and workings. Once an important Roman route, center, and town, Shepton Millet is an ideal base for discovering all the history and beauty that Somerset has to offer. Wells and Glastonbury are nearby, the Roman and Georgian city of Bath, and the historic port of Bristol are all less than an hour's journey by car. Closer to home, the town can boast a rich history of its own. A brand new series of heritage trails to be launched in August 2021 will reveal some of Shepton Millet's best-kept secrets and immerse visitors in the people, the industry, the brewing, and a rich tapestry of stories about the evolution of the town from the Domesday Book onwards. Shepton Millet Prison, once the oldest prison in the country, was home during World War II to the Cray twins, the Domesday Book, and the Magna Carta.
That's quite an eccentric mix there.
It must have been the dungeon. Was it really safe?
Yeah,
right?
They probably kept it safe there.
Wild.
Except for the Cray twins.
Yeah.
I mean, they kept them safe there too, but for different reasons.
Yeah. Now a visitor attraction, you can enjoy a tour with ghosts if you so choose, the escape rooms, or even a night behind bars. That would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The article continues, steam railway enthusiasts, children and families alike, are all welcome at the East Somerset Steam Railway just outside Shepton Millet. Take a ride on the train and visit the museum, waiting room, and ticket office to get a glimpse into the world of steam. Visit the engine shed and workshop to see restoration of steam engines in action. If you want to cool off on a warm day, swim a few lengths, or enjoy a bit of family fun in the pool, visit the Shepton Millet Lido, warmed using recycled heat from nearby cider and Perrymaker Brothers drinks. End quote. So there's a lot to unpack there. It looks like a fun place to visit.
Steam railway.
Yeah.
Plus oldest prison in the country with possible ghosts if we choose. I mean,
who wouldn't choose
yes,
ghosts,
please.
Right? I've been on the steam railway once. We had a family vacation down in Dartmouth, UK, and we took a steam train. I've got pictures of it somewhere. It was really pretty, vintage, fun. All right. Back to the spooky stuff.
All right. And now let's talk about the man in question, Owen Parfit. And let me start by saying that the main sources for this episode, there are a couple of newspaper articles, and the oldest one is from 1862, so almost exactly 100 years after Owen vanished. There's a lot of myth surrounding this disappearance, and as it is often the case in these old-timey stories, so hard to distinguish facts from fiction. And as the years went on, things were added to the story, and we will do our best to give you all the details and let you know when something seems to be a little bit more on the fiction side and not as much fact. So, Owen Parfit was probably born around the turn of the century in or around the area of Shepton Millet. That means he was born somewhere in the late 1690s or very early 1700s. We know that because he's described as being in his 70s when he went missing. He was born into a family of tailors, and so he too learned the family trade. But a modest, uneventful life was not what he wanted for himself, because Owen was quite the adventurous young man. He left his home as soon as he was old enough, and given that it was in the 1700s, I assume that must have been in his teenager years, and he became a sailor. Which makes sense, because is there any other profession around that time that could promise you more adventure than being a sailor?
No, I mean, that was it. If you wanted adventure, sailing, that was your jam, for sure.
So when he finally returned home to settle in Shepton Millet, he was a middle-aged man who had many tales to tell. Or not. Because apparently Owen Parfit was not, let's say, the light of the party. He was rather grumpy, often aggressive. He used a harsh military tone to talk to people. And he didn't sit down with his neighbors over a nice cup of tea to tell them the stories about his life. But from bits and pieces he dropped now and then, the people of Shepton Millet figured out the following. When Owen had left home and became a sailor, he first of all had a lot of adventures apparently with ladies. He was quite a ladies' man, at least that's what he said. And he also went to see many foreign places, mostly the New World, so the Americas, and Africa. For a while, it seems as if he was employed in the British Army, or Navy, I guess. Maybe. But at some point, he found himself in some bad company. He started to hang out with pirates, I'd say. How do you call it when you join the pirates? Hanging out sounds like Netflix and chill kind of things.
He started to... How do you describe it when someone you care about gets mixed up with pirates? I don't...
Well, he hung out with pirates, let's say it like this.
It's still a problem, though. I mean, it's a legit issue. I just don't know... Yeah, he fell in with a rough crowd, let's say.
Yeah. And he also got mixed up in the slave trade, transatlantic slave trade, apparently. So, all in all, it seems somewhat safe to say that Owen might not have been the kindest and most moral person on this planet. We could, of course, be completely wrong. Maybe he was a wonderful man. Maybe these were all rumors or stories that were later added, or that he, told the neighbors because he was kind of a show-off, or he wanted to keep them away. I don't know. But there was one person who knew Owen like no other, and that was his sister, Mary.
Yeah, that's right. Because, you see, after Owen had returned from his travels to settle down back in his homeland of England, he decided to start working as a tailor again, and he had his sister Mary come move in with him so that she could take care of the household. He regularly traveled to Bristol to meet with mysterious people and pick up money. But pretty quickly his health started to deteriorate. We don't know the cause, but at some point he started to experience symptoms of paralysis. At first, he was still able to move around with the help of canes or hobble around a little bit, but he was not able to travel around anymore and was definitely not able to make these mysterious trips to Bristol back and forth picking up money anymore. So then from time to time, shady-looking men would show up at Owen's house, and the neighbors described them as having the appearance of, quote, seafaring men.
I picture them looking like Bob Hoskins as Mr. Smee in Hook.
Oh, I had more of like a swarthy, broad-chested man in an Aran knit sweater in mind, but now it's full Smee. Yeah, I love Bob Hoskins. Very different.
I love Aran sweaters.
I do too. So, well, we didn't know what these men wanted, but rumors had it that they probably had something to do with his trips to Bristol, that he could no longer go, right? So maybe they were coming to bring him the money for whatever reason. Who can say? But after a while, his paralysis continued to get worse and worse. And you remember Owen lived with his sister, so she cooked and cleaned and made his bed. And Owen was paralyzed from the waist down, so completely unable to walk anywhere. And at that point, she would, with the help of a female neighbor, they would carry him out of the bed and put him in a chair in the parlor. Or if the weather was nice, they'd carry him to his chair on the porch so that he could enjoy the sunshine. And the neighbor was a 25-year-old woman named Susanna Snook, and she lived about 50 yards or 45 meters from Parfit's house.
Didn't we have another case where a woman was called Snook?
Oh, probably.
Somehow that rings a bell.
It does.
The sister, she was such a good sister.
Obedient.
She was older than Owen, which means Owen was in his 70s and his sister was therefore in her late 70s, if not in her 80s. And she not only takes care of the house and Owen, but she also carries him around. I mean, with help, but still, that's... And the neighbor said she had the tidiest and cleanest house of all. They carried him around whenever he wanted to be outside, and that's what they did on a day in early June, as I said before, which was either June of 1763 or 1768. Now, while the morning and noon that day was a bit chilly, in the early afternoon the sun came out and it turned into a perfectly fine summer day. Mary went to get her neighbor Susanna, and together they carried Owen outside to have him sit in a chair on the porch. He was still in his sleeping attire, which around that time, and in this social class, would usually mean for a man a nightshirt. Most often that would have been the shirt they also wore during the day, and breeches. And sometimes they would also wear a nightcap. So Owen was sitting outside in his old-timey PJs, so to say, and his sister had covered him with what was described as a grey greatcoat. I wasn't familiar with the term. I somewhat guessed how it probably looked like, just based on the era this all takes place.
Yeah.
But of course, I looked it up to get a better idea. So for all of you who didn't know the term, you know when you see it. You might just not know the name. The greatcoat first made its appearance in the middle of the 18th century, so around 1750, and it was basically a replacement for cloaks. Wikipedia says about the greatcoat, quote, "A greatcoat, also known as a watch coat, is a large overcoat that is typically made of wool designed for warmth and protection against the weather. Its collar and cuffs can be turned out to protect the face and hands from cold and rain, and the short cape around the shoulders provides extra warmth and repels rainwater. During the 17th and 18th century and the Industrial Revolution, greatcoats became available for all social classes. It was popular in the 19th century as a military uniform and casual wear for the wealthy, and is still used for inclement weather by many armed forces around the world. The coat generally hangs down below the knees and the cape is kept short, normally just above or below the elbows. It also sports deep pockets for keeping letters and food dry. It is typically colored grey, though other colors may be used. In Regency fashion, a greatcoat would be covered by several short capes, and the extreme dandies might wear 10 or more." End quote. That last part made me laugh.
Yeah.
Those damn dandies with their frivolous, many-caped coats.
I do love a dramatic cape. I have a modest collection. I'm working on it still. 10 short capes, though, sounds like too many short capes. Like, it's like
that's too many capes.
It makes me think of those little dinosaurs in Jurassic Park that spit on you. Like, just all of a sudden, oh my goodness, so many capes. All right. So Owen is on the porch, and Susanna had returned home, but she would come back later to help carry him back to his bed in the upstairs bedroom. And so Owen's sister had started to put fresh sheets on Owen's bed. Owen is probably watching people and working in the meadows across the way, just cutting the grass. According to several testimonies, there were quite a few people working in close proximity to the house at that time. So Mary's inside, but she's still talking to Owen because the windows are open as it's a nice warm summer day. And they're chatting away, and most of the sources say that his sister was inside the house for about 15 minutes. Some sources say half an hour, but either way, 15 to 30 minutes. He's sitting outside, she's inside, doing chores, and chatting to him through the open windows. And then, all of a sudden, Owen isn't replying to her statements anymore. She's having a one-sided conversation. So she goes outside to see what's going on. Maybe he needed help, something happened. But she's absolutely shocked when all she finds is an empty chair on the porch and the greatcoat lying on the floor. But where was Owen? So at first his sister's afraid that he might have just fallen off the porch, and she's looking all around, but there's just no sign of him. And around that time, Susanna had returned to the cottage, and she finds Mary in tears, saying that her brother is gone. Of course, Susanna, we're sure, was just like, what do you mean gone, right? Like, how?
Where?
Why? But pretty soon, the neighbor, Susanna, she realizes that, Owen Parfit is missing. So she runs over to the people that have been working outside, and she asks them if they know where Owen is, but no one does. Nobody saw him go anywhere. Pretty quickly, the whole town is informed, and they all gather to search for Owen, because how far can he be, right? The man is a paraplegic. His legs don't work. He has no control from the waist down. And he's in his nightshirt. So they think the only way that he'd have been able to get off the porch and away from the house was by crawling, using just his arms, dragging his legs. So he must be around here somewhere, right? He can't have gone too far. So they start looking. Some articles say that really the whole town of 5,000 people were looking, but I'm not sure that was likely. But definitely a lot of people showed up and tried to help. And we have a snippet from an article that was in the Bristol Mercury and Daily Post, 10th of December, 1892, page 9. Quote, "The news ran like wildfire that the old man had mysteriously disappeared, and the neighbors promptly hurried out to assist in the search. Scarcely, however, had they begun when the weather, which up to that time had been fine and bright, suddenly changed. The sky became black with thunderclouds, and in a few minutes a tremendous storm of thunder, lightning, and rain burst upon Shepton Millet. Nevertheless, the searchers were not disheartened. They examined carefully every road, ditch, wood, and field within a radius of 3 or 4 miles. The wells and ponds were dragged, but not the faintest vestige did they find of Owen Parfit, dead or living. All through the night the search was continued with lanterns, and not until after sunset on the following day did the searchers discontinue their task, but their labor was in vain." End quote. So, all of a sudden the weather got absolutely terrible, but people kept searching for Owen. The search continued for days, but nothing came of it. They also inquired with the magistrate in Bristol to see if any lead could be found. One of the rumors was that it came to light that Owen Parfit didn't actually receive any army pension or military pension of any kind, so was he actually never in the service? Then where did the money come from? Because no matter how much they searched for answers, not a single trace of him was found, and he was never seen again.
To this day. Dun dun dun.
To this day. Yeah.
I don't want to sound too flippant about a missing person.
No. It's a little easier when it happened
250 years ago. 200. Yeah, 50. So, of course, there are many theories out there of what happened to Owen. Where did he go? What happened? Let's talk theories, shall we? The first theory is that Owen Parfit was not, in fact, a paraplegic. He faked the whole thing and simply got tired of it. He was missing his adventurous lifestyle. He got annoyed that he was not being able to do anything without help, being totally depending on his elderly sister. So one sunny June afternoon, he simply stood up from his chair on the porch and walked away from this life. Now, what speaks against this theory? His leg muscles would have been extremely weakened after spending a prolonged time not using them. I heard it was years. He was in his PJs and didn't even take the coat with him. And a man in just, basically what's underwear, he would have clearly attracted some attention. Also, there were people in the meadows working. There were horse-drawn carts. They were coming and going, to pick up and transport the hay. Someone would have seen something. I think it's an unlikely theory, and I just can't think of a reason why he would fake being paralyzed for such a long time.
Yeah, that's...
The only explanation why he would fake it is because he's super lazy and wants his sister to do everything, but he doesn't sound lazy.
No. And I definitely think the men in the fields would have noticed Bob Cratchit coming over for a chin wag or wandering off down the... Right? He was in a night... I wear those nightshirts, actually. But yeah, I don't know. And I agree, I don't think he'd have faked paralysis. It just seems like at some point you'd fuck it up, right? And people would realize that you were faking it. Nobody can fake... Well, I guess people can, but... Yeah, we're agreeing on that
and
one.
You must be a real evil person to have your 80-year-old sister carry you around.
The worst. So, yeah. All right. So the next theory has something to do with his shady past and the money he received pretty regularly and the weird men who visited him a couple of times. Some think that the money Owen received was some kind of hush money. Did Owen know something that could have gotten other people, maybe influential people, into a lot of trouble? And did they finally grow tired of paying for Owen's silence and they decided to simply get rid of him? I mean, it's possible, but some things do speak against it. And it's basically, again, there's no proof. Nobody saw anything. How did the abductors move Owen? He was described as a heavy and stout man. So they carried him off the porch, but then what? They put him in a carriage? Nobody saw or heard a carriage arrive or leave the house. Did they carry him through the fields and meadows? There were a lot of people working in those fields and meadows, and somebody probably would have seen, right? And also, this would have just been exhausting. Like, moving dead weight is really, really hard. Yeah. And
especially through a meadow.
Right? You're not moving quickly through a meadow carrying a person. And people started looking for him really pretty quickly. It's not like, he was only missing for a matter of minutes before his sister raised an alarm. It's not like he was gone for hours, Yeah.
No, I agree. I think it makes no sense. They couldn't have moved him very far. But the theory that you just said is kind of connected to another theory. So in 1813, a man named Thomas Strode had purchased a house that was sitting in a distance of 140 meters or 150 yards from the little cottage where Owen and his sister had lived. The house had belonged to a woman named Widow Lookyer. It was very hard to read in the newspaper article. The way I read it was Lookyer.
Yeah, she's a widow.
Lock. Yeah, she's a widow.
Yeah.
She was not only a widow, she was either a distant relative of Owen, or she did have an intimate relationship with Owen. Who can say? Maybe both. I
mean, how else are you going to keep that farmland in the family?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Strode had purchased a house around 1813, and one day he was digging in his garden, and he found human remains. First the skull, and then the rest of the skeleton. And he said it was buried in kind of a chaotic heap, so not like somebody was carefully placed to rest there, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
More like somebody just threw them there and buried them. Of course, he immediately informed the police, and they started to investigate. Now, it's 1813, and there are still some people alive who knew Owen, and who still remember the story of him going missing, and they think, obviously, that the skeleton is actually Owen Parfit. Which would make sense. It's an unknown body buried in close proximity to Owen's home. The theory was that the widow was paid by Owen's abductors. It was a close-by home where they could have taken him and, get rid of him, with a smaller chance of being seen by the people working in the fields. In my opinion, this all sounds very possible, but apparently the investigators soon figured out that it was a female skeleton they had found. However, the journalists of the Bristol Mercury and Daily Post, the article we already mentioned before, did not believe that the skeleton belonged to a woman.
No, that's right, because this is what they wrote. There's a lot to unpack in this little piece here. So they say, quote, "Our theory is that there were persons in Bristol who were interested in making away with Owen Parfit, either because he was in possession of secrets which were compromising to them, or because he had claims upon them in respect of unlawful transactions, at home or abroad, which he had been concerned with them, claims which they were tired of satisfying." So it's basically saying they think he was blackmailing somebody or involved in some kind of blackmailing scheme, is what they're saying there. It continues, "It is by no means certain that Owen had not a hoard of money, which he carried in a belt around his person. If so, the widow, who was probably connected with the Bristol gang, whoever they may have been, was, from her intimacy with Parfit, aware of this fact, and robbery may have been the real motive for the man's murder." So first they say they think he was involved in blackmailing, and now they think that because he had a lot of money and the widow knew it, she conspired with the Bristol people to kill him and take his money. Okay. Then it continues. "For murdered, we do not doubt that he was, nor have we any doubt that the skeleton found was his, though an attempt was made subsequently to show that the bones were those of a woman. That the widow had a hand in the abduction and murder of Owen Parfit is another point on which we have a suspicion, amounting almost to a moral certainty. but she had been long dead before the discovery of the skeleton in 1813, and, as she kept herself aloof from her neighbors and was, from all accounts, a self-contained woman of retiring and secluded habits, no one was able to throw much light upon her history, either before or after the mysterious disappearance of Owen Parfit. She died and made no sign, carrying with her to the grave whatever knowledge she had, guilty or not, of how Owen Parfit came by his death. Such is the story of one of the most singular mysteries of crime that we have ever come across. We have investigated the evidence, such as it is, very carefully, and our deliberate conclusion is that the man was carried off and murdered in the manner we have suggested. So far as we are aware, no one else has ever suggested this theory, though to us it seems the most rational and natural. As to the Shepton Millet people, rather than accept it and so destroy the romantic illusion of their cherished mystery, we dare say they would rather pin their faith to the vulgar legend which credits the devil with having spirited away the body of Owen Parfit, for there are many people in the world who will believe anything, no matter how outlandish and preternatural, rather than admit a commonplace and sensible solution of a problem which appeals to their credulity and superstition." End quote.
The newspaper people were basically the first armchair detectives.
They were.
They were sleuthing around.
That was the first web sleuths. That was the first time just a group of people in town were like, listen, let's sit down and talk about this crime and speculate. I guess one of the things I'm curious about here is, and I told you that I was having a hard time figuring out exactly when we were able to determine between a male versus female skeleton. And you would have thought that if they had said this is definitely a female, from looking at the pelvic bones, then that would have told us for sure it wasn't, but it seems like it's kind of up in the air still then, huh?
I think probably they knew pretty well by that time if it was a male or female skeleton from the pelvic bone. But what I think is that the journalists saw there's a conspiracy going on, because I don't think that they were able to look at the pelvic bone, the journalists.
Right.
They just had to take what the investigators told them.
Okay.
And if they wanted to keep this kind of a mystery because
it adds an allure to the town.
I don't know, for whatever reason. So did they have some tourists 200 years later?
Sure.
Then
it's a long game.
So I think the journalists were sure that it was a male pelvic
and that
bone.
it was all a lie.
I mean, how could they prove it? I think their theory makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, oh, I agree. I think the skeleton was what. We'll get more into that. All right, what's the next theory? Next theory has something to do with pirates. It's pretty similar to the second theory. So this theory just says that Owen knew where a vast treasure was buried, and so they kidnapped him and forced him to give up the goods.
I highly doubt it, but I do like this story the most because it's very Treasure Island and it would make a good book.
It would.
All right, Annie, the article you read before mentioned the devil, and this brings us to the last and most beloved theory. The one theory that turned the whole case into an urban legend. And this story was also what Owen's sister believed to be true.
Mm-hmm.
So, remember how the weather had suddenly changed as soon as the people of Shepton Millet had started looking for Owen? It was a nice sunny June afternoon, and then, without a warning, it turned into heavy thunderstorms. And didn't some witnesses even report a sulfuric smell in the air? People who knew Owen Parfit were 100% sure the devil himself had come to pick up Owen for all his bad deeds.
Okay, so this is, again, we're going back to that same article. So they write, quote, "The country people in those days were intensely superstitious, and at one time Shepton Millet had enjoyed an evil reputation for witchcraft. Indeed, if we remember rightly, more than one old crone had been done to death there as a wicked witch. Some time after Owen Parfit's extraordinary disappearance, one or two of his neighbors recalled the fact that they had heard him tell strange tales of magicians and necromancers and wizards and Obi medicine men with whom he had been brought in contact in Africa. Possibly he had in days gone by had an unholy traffic with those children of the devil, and some of them, at the bidding of their master, old Nicky Ben, had come and whisked him away to the realms of brimstone, unseen of mortal eyes." Then there was the sudden storm which came on just about the time of his disappearance, which was itself an indication that the prince of the power of the air had had a hand in spiriting away his victim. This belief rapidly gained ground as years went on and brought no other solution of the mystery, and amongst the ignorant and uneducated, it became an accepted theory that Owen Parfit had been carried off by the devil or his emissaries. And Auld Nicky Ben is a name that was used for the devil since the 17th century, but I think it's more common in Scotland.
I love that.
So
Auld
good,
Nicky
right?
Ben. I think that's so cute.
It's very shady, this article. I kind of love
Very.
it. It's our favorite article of the time. All right, so what are our theories? What are our theories about Owen Parfit and the devil? I mean...
I say probably not. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah. Well...
Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I start doubting that he was really such a horrible, grumpy man. I mean, if he was a pirate and connected to the slave trading, obviously he was not a great person. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, right.
But I'm talking about how he treated the people in Shepton Millet. Because why would so many people then search through a thunderstorm and through the night and for days for this man?
Well, I think they had to at that time, right? Because...
Yeah, but I mean, you can search for a little bit and but searching through a thunderstorm is like...
That is a lot to ask of people.
Yeah.
Also, if the whole thing is that he was carried off by the devil, then you need to really make him a terrible person, especially when you're telling the story to your children, so they behave. I think it's interesting. I said to you just before we started recording, I hadn't thought of it before. I was like, oh, what if there was just a real quick microburst, just a quick touchdown and a tornado just sucked him up?
Yeah. Possible.
Maybe. And all that was left was his great court.
It was aliens.
Aliens. I think my favorite theory, and I know I might be alone, but to consider maybe it wasn't Satan, but maybe his sister was like sick and tired of cooking and cleaning and keeping his house and, carrying him around and emptying his chamber pots and all that jazz. And then she and the neighbor, who was also, 25 and annoyed with everything that involved being a lady at that time, and also the widow for the same reasons. What if all the women kind of took care of him? I mean, he could have had a degenerative disc disease. He could have had spinal stenosis. He could have had something like MS. Like, there are a dozen different things that could have caused his paralysis in his legs, but also could it have been arsenic?
Oh.
Could the sister have just been slowly poisoning his crotchety old ass to kind of get him gone? And then maybe she talks to the neighbor and the widow, and they bury him, and they find them, split the money. Something of a Goodbye Earl situation. Just, I don't know. That seems the most likely to me, honestly, that the sister, the neighbor, and the widow lady all got together because they would have needed each other in order to make it. It wouldn't work unless at least two of them were involved, right?
And I really have the feeling like that the skeleton they found might have not been a female skeleton. I mean, it's such a shame that we don't know for sure, that we don't have it to look at it, right?
Exactly. And it could have been really old. I mean, who knows? That skeleton could be 1,000 years old or
forever,
something. Well, not that old, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting... I love these old legends and where they come from.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think anytime there's an explanation published in a newspaper that legit is mentioning the devil in the literal sense as being a problematic person in town, we have to talk about it, right?
Person. Do you mean the devil being a problematic person?
Listen, Satan came back last week. News at 11.
Very problematic. So problematic.
Something good?
Something good. Let me think.
Do you want me to do mine first?
Yeah, sure.
I only have one. I know what mine is because just yesterday I realized that tonight we have a concert that's been postponed from 2020. So I'm going to a concert tonight. My husband's favorite band is Pink Floyd, and we're going to go see Roger Waters tonight. So that is going to be a lot of fun, even though we're getting thunderstorms.
Perfect.
Yeah. How about you?
My something good. My something good is I ordered firewood for the winter, which is a huge relief for me. It's gonna be delivered on Friday. So we have this wood burning stove kind of thing that we use at the moment for heating the bedroom downstairs. there's this whole situation. I don't want to get into detail with gas in Europe at the moment, natural gas and blah, blah, blah. So I'm very thankful for the firewood. It's going to be a lot of work to store it all and stack it, but my sister's going to come and help me. And no matter how much work it's going to be, we're not going to be freezing in winter. And
no, that's right.
That's really something good for me at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the little things.
It's like not freezing to death in winter. Yeah.
It's such a good thing.
I feel bad because I'm like, I'm going to a rock and roll show and you're like, we're not going to freeze this winter.
No, seriously. Like, I'm living in this construction site house probably for the next 5 years until we finish. But every single day I wake up and I'm so freaking thankful. Like, seriously, beyond thankful.
It's amazing. But your house is coming along beautifully. Really beautifully.
I'm really happy here.
Yeah.
Really.
I'm happy for you. All right. Thanks so much for listening. We really, really do appreciate it so much. Podcast awards, I think we told you everything that you need to know at the beginning of the episode.
Yes.
Please go to podcastawards.com, give them your email, verify it so they know you're not a bot, and vote for us. We would be so grateful. Please, please. Also, if you want to leave a rating or a review, we would be ever so grateful. We're getting close to my personal goal of 1,000 reviews in the United States, and that's very exciting for me. You can check out our webpage, freshhellpodcast.com. That's going to tell you all the different places you can listen to us, how to get in touch with us, our mailing address, all of that stuff you will find on our webpage. Also, there'll be a link of where to buy our merch, which is through Teespring. I just got a long sleeve t-shirt, actually, that says Keep Going on it, and it's so comfy. I'm going to order a few more.
My mom ordered the tote bag.
Nice.
Behind my back. She wanted to support us, which was so cute.
I love that. Your mom's the best.
You will also find a link to our Patreon. We're gonna have the next game night on 29th of July, around midnight my time, which is 6 p.m. Annie's time. Also, come join our Facebook group. Come say hi. It's the best, most awesome group there is.
It really is.
We have posts about pets where you can post your photos of your pets, but please, any photo of any pet is always welcome. Talking about pets, please tell them we said hi, hug them, cuddle them, tell them we love them, tell them we miss them. They are the best pets, even if they wake you up at 4 a.m. with the sweet, sweet sounds of throwing up.
Ugh, God, that's the worst.
Be kind to your pets, to your fellow human being, and be kind to yourself, which is the hardest part.
It is. It truly is. Yeah. And, listen, if you, and I know especially in our Facebook group, there are a couple of people in particular that we are thinking of. You know who you are. I know things are really hard now, but like we always say, if you're going through hell,
keep going. And we had a message from a listener who thought I always say choose, which he found so profound. So that's what I'm going to say tonight or today. Choose wisely.
Make good choices. That's right. See you next week.
Tschüss.
Bye.